Welcome to episode 26 of the Seagrove Sessions. And again it sees us wandering the streets of bygone Leith, and this time Edinburgh, with Daisy. She remembers the homeless hostel at Henderson Street, her nursery, that's nearly 90 years ago, using the tram to go uptown with her pram. A pram she brought out of the window of Patrick Thomson's store. She recalls the shops of Leith, the streets and the Wynds. Step back in time again with Daisy. Enjoy.
Well, when you came along Henderson Street, you passed Lanny's, and then you crossed the road there, and there was a swing park, and it was the Co-op in Henderson Street, and that was Henderson Gardens. But if you went along there, you came to Keddy Gardens. What is it? No, Taylor Gardens. Keddy Gardens was up Ferry Road past the library. But at the broad pavement, there used to be a house on one side, and it used to be for men that were sort of, didn't work, they were sort of down and out, and they could go in there and they could get their tea and they could get a bath and they could have a bed for the night, and then they could come out, but they had to come out in the morning, and then they were on their own all day. But it was a shame for them, you know, it wasn't their fault they were on down and out, you know.
Talk about the broo being down.
Oh, the broo, well, if you went down past the broad pavement and went over, and it's the water of Leith, and then when you crossed there, I can't mind the name of the street, my daughter's pal lived in it, and right on the corner was the broo, and you had to go and sign on if you wanted money, if you weren't working. But everybody went to the broo to get paid. And then if you cut off, you came to Tolbooth Wine, and there was a great big clothes shop there. And in those days, everybody had Provident cheques, and you could go there with a cheque and buy your stuff. And then just past there was the wee shop, the Alex Sutherland's. They were no relation, but he was killed in an accident at Seafield. But those were the days, you know.
Those were the days.
You just had to get on with it, whether you wanted to or no.
Does it seem a long time ago now, Daisy?
Not really, I've got a lot of good memories.
You certainly have. Because the Provy was everywhere, wasn't it? Everyone went to the Provy.
Everybody, because you got the dividend. And then, when it was dividend time, they used to have double stamps. So everybody went to get everything, and then they would use their stamps to buy the school uniforms. Yeah. But if you came in the grocery end of Bangor Road, you came in, and Mr. MacDonald's desk was there, he was the manager, used to stand and make sure you were in on time. And then if you moved up a wee bit, the men used to make up the butter, pats of butter that you could buy. And then there was a space, and then that was the grocery. The counter down here, it used to be Mr. Brown. He used to make up the orders for people that got them delivered.
Oh, so they delivered as well?
They done deliveries.
So a lot going on, wasn't there?
There was always a lot. But you know, if you went down Bangor Road a wee bit, and you went up Dorian Moss, and then there was a sweetie shop, and then there was an ice cream shop, and then there was a stair. And if you went up that stair, you were in the cheque office where they checked all the cheques. And then if you went through there, you were in the bank. And if you went through the bank, it was a hardware department that was all round there. And you could go round there. And up in that top corner, they had a toilet.
You've got some memory for where everything was.
Wish my legs were as good. But they all had mice. They were having a lot of bother with mice. Because everybody got cats. Because we had a cat. We had a lovely cat. It was called Snowball. And see, he had kittens. When they had kittens, everybody was wanting a kitten. you went down the Kirgate.
Yeah.
And then there was an opening. But if you went along that opening, you came out at Lanny's in Henderson Street.
All right.
But if you went that way,
Yeah.
you came out St Mary's. And there was a house at the back of Trinity House. And I knew a couple. He worked on the buses. And his wife used to clean Trinity House. And she took us round Trinity House. So we walked all around, came out, it was lovely, you know. And then you walked further up the Kirgate and you came to St Andrew Street. And opposite was White Horse Course or something.
All right.
But you could go along there and go that way and go straight out, and you were in Constitution Street. And when they dug up Constitution Street for the tram lines, they found a lot of dead bodies because they'd buried a lot of folk that was in the plague or something.
Right.
And they buried the bodies there. And then if you went up to Albus Wine, there was an awful good butcher's. My neighbour used to get a sheep's head or something and make soup. I once got a tongue and pressed a tongue, and it was lovely.
Was it?
You just took it out and you put loads of heavy things on top of it, and when you cut it, it was beautiful. And a wee bit shank you made the soup with always had a wee bit fat on it. It was lovely.
Because a lot of people ate offal, didn't they?
Oh, aye. Because in those days, they used to have sheep's liver and pig's liver, but sheep's liver was the best. It was really, it just melted in your mouth. But you could make a nice stew. But my sister-in-law had died very young, so her husband and her 2 boys used to come in to me on a Friday night, and they stayed all weekend. They went away on a Monday morning. So I always had a liver and made them liver for their tea, because we didn't have a lot of money. No. And it was a cheap tea to have stewed liver. You just put stewed liver and onions. And then you walked further along and there was a pen and people could go in there and get their cars serviced. And then you walked further along and you were at the bottom of Loch End Road, and that was the church I went to. My 2 daughters were christened in there. And then it was the Persevere pub. Then if you crossed the road there and walked along a bit, you were at the Capitol. But if you went along the wee opening before that, you turned and went along, and there was a hole in the wall. You could go through that hole in the wall and turn, and it was Ferrier Street there. And then it was the Capitol, and you could go through there because my sister-in-law's friend's auntie had a wee grocer's shop in Ferrier Street.
There were little shops everywhere, weren't there?
There was, because there wasn't any big shops. And then there was a woman who used to stand and sell mussels at the top of Bangor Road on a Saturday.
She'd be from New Haven, would she?
She was in the New Haven Wives Choir, and her husband had an electric shop in Ann Street, and then you went along Ann Street, and her husband had a wee electric shop, and if you walked a wee bit further on, there was a restaurant on the middle corner, and my husband's best friend lived on the first flat. And you know, when he was in his house, if he went through the door, he was in the house next door. And that was George and Rita Beattie. He went away to work in Ankara. He joined the diplomatic corps.
You seem to know everyone in Leith and where they lived.
Because I worked in a store for so many years. Yeah. I mean, I used to know all the customers.
Now, you spoke about the woman selling mussels on the street. What about, were there people selling newspapers?
Only on a Saturday night. I think they sold the Pink because everybody wanted to know the football results to see if they'd won any money.
And did you ever remember that people tell me at the top of the Kirkgate you used to get people on soap boxes?
Oh, That was Alec Cormack, I think his name was. He used to stand on a soapbox, and I think he spoke a lot of rubbish. But everybody used to go and listen to him, you know. You came down the Kirkgate, and then it was Laurie Street. He used to say, you could get into Laurie Street Picture House if you had a penny and a jam jar.
And what about Woolworths? That was a big thing, wasn't it?
Because it had 2 doors. When you first came into the Kirkgate, it was a shoe shop. And then, I can't remember what was next. And then if you crossed the road, it was Woolworths had a door on the Kirkgate, and they had a door next to the chemist at the foot of the walk. So you could go in one door and come out the other door. If you went along Great Junction Street to Fire Brigade Street, which is really Junction Place, but if you walk straight along there, past the wash house, and facing you was the YWCA. And when I was 14, everybody went there to learn to dance. And then when they got older, a lot of them went to Fairley's. I think I was only in Fairley's once. And I was once in McDonald's. It was a great big long hall, and it had a fire at one end. McDonald's Hall, you could go up. There was a bowling green. There was Redbrace Place. But I can remember going to the nursery in Keddy Gardens, and I was only 5. Do you know, you went along, and there was 2 long corridors with platform seats, and you went in there. I can't mind the teacher's name. She had white hair, and you used to sit there, and she used to tell you a story. And then when you came out of there was a swing park. People went into the swing park. But if you went straight along, but opposite the swing park, it was Pitt Street. And if you went along Pitt Street, you came out at Chancellor Mills. And then you came back down Ferry Road. And then you could come along Great Junction Street. And if you crossed again, that's where the pie shop was.
My goodness, you know your way round Leith, don't you?
Well, I couldn't drive. My husband could drive. I could never drive.
Did you ever have a bike when you were young?
We couldn't afford one. But you know, my sister got a bicycle. Somebody gave her. No, she went with a chap that lived in the corporation buildings, and he had a motorbike. And you know, I think I've still got the photograph with Jean and him on the motorbike.
Do you remember there being much, fighting when the pubs were out and things like that?
No, really. I suppose there was fighting, you know.
Do you ever remember, I've heard people talk about Scot-Irish Day.
You used to get an old tight, and you used to fill it with old rags, and then you try and hit each other, and you say Scotch or Irish.
I wonder what time of year that was.
Oh, I think it was the autumn.
And so in Leith, I presume most people were Hibs supporters, is that right?
Most of them, but I don't know what my husband would have said. All my grandchildren are Heart supporters.
Shocking.
They're all Heart supporters.
Oh, no.
I don't know what Bert would have said.
You'll remember the trams.
You could get on the tram at the top of Bowling Green. I used to put my pram on the front of the car, and I used to go to the West End because my friend lived at Collington, and she came in to visit her mother at Valleyfield Street, and she walked down, and she used to meet me at the West End, and we used to go a walk with her prams down the walk to Pilrig, which was very good.
And did you have those big proper prams?
Actually, my pram, before I had it, was in Patrick Thomson's window for ages. It was up for sale. It was a big grey high pram.
Oh, that was a good pram.
I think it was only about 14 or 18 pounds.
So you did go to Patrick Thomson's then?
Did go to Patrick Thomson's. You could go into Patrick Thomson's, and it was the perfume counters. And then if you went up the stairs in the middle, it was all the clothes. You could buy your clothes. And if you went over the corner, there was a lift and get a cup of tea and a scone.
Because it was quite posh, Patrick Thomson's.
It was very posh once upon a time. I don't know what it is now.
It's a hotel now.
Oh, it is a hotel. I know it's a hotel. My pram was in the window for ages.
Did you go along Princess Street much?
There was at the bottom of the bridges, was there a horse there?
A statue?
A statue.
Yes, still there.
It's still there.
Yeah.
Well, if you walked past there and you went round the way, or you went down the way, it was all the jewellers' shops. I think that's where I got my engagement ring, Abbott's, the jewellers, Leith Street. But if you went right down Leith Street and you crossed the road, that's when Fairley's was. And then it was Hardy's, the furniture shop. But if you went down that way, you came out at the back of the station, and a lot of people used to walk round there to meet their friends coming off the train.
Did you use the train much? Because did you go from Leith Central Station?
No, I can't mind where I went from, but my granny lived in Cowdenbeath, and my other granny lived in Aberdeen. So before I went to the school, I always had to go there my holidays. And we used to throw a penny over the Forth Bridge, because they said it was lucky if you threw a penny over the bridge. So I think if somebody went fishing in there, they'd find a lot of money now.
I mean, you could buy things with a penny back then, couldn't you? So it was.
You could buy a lollipop or a Fanta or a penny chew. It was a long toffee thing. Chewed it. It took you ages to swallow it, but it was only a penny. People never had much money in those days.
Did you get pocket money when you were a girl?
No, because I went to work when I was 14 and I got 12 and 6. And I worked like all week. I just got half day in a wedding.
Did you work Saturday as well?
Work Saturday.
Did you ever, people talk about the Tally Tower?
I was there once. Now you went along, you came down North Junction Street and you went along and there was a bridge. And when you went over that bridge, there was a wee bit railing and that was all sand. And a lot of folk used to go to the Tally Tour on a Saturday. You could go in and paddle.
Because there was the shipyard down there as well, wasn't there?
There was Venus's, the shipyard was there.
Did you go out and get fish and chips much?
Not very often. Didn't have a lot of money when I was young. But when my granddaughter comes to visit me from Gibraltar, she always brings me in fish and chips. Always.
You can't, mind you, it's a bit of a luxury now.
When my other granddaughter, she comes in on a Sunday. She's got 2 boys. Her lad is Harris. But when she comes to visit me, she brings me in a wimpy.
Oh,
That's
right.
lovely.
That was episode 26 of the Seagrove Sessions, memories and stories from North Edinburgh Dementia Care's Seagrove Centre. For more information about our work, go to www.nedc.org.uk or follow us on Facebook, NEDC The Seagrove Sessions. Catch you the next time.